Afrika Mashariki, tuwezeshe kuishi kwa amani, tutimize na malengo yetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu. Uzalendo pia mshikamano viwe msingi wa umoja wetu, na tulinde uhuru na amani, mila zetu na desturi zetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu. Viwandani na hata mashambani, tufanye kazi sote kwa makini, tujitoe kwa hali na mali, tuijenge jumuiya bora. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu.
Us and all the guests who are invited. We know together we are stronger. King of glory, may you walk with us in this journey. Help us that at the end of this forum, we will be better than we are, and we'll go back to our places to implement what we shall hear and learn and grow our nation. So we surrender the entire program into your hands. For this we pray in the name of God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you very much, Chair. Bishop Joseph Kibucho is the chairman of Anglican Development Services Kenya Board, and we are privileged to have you here. Your Grace, allow me now to take us to the next part of our agenda or program to this morning. We want to take this opportunity to introduce guests who we have invited to be part of this. We'll begin with the government representatives, kindly. Government representatives present, we request you just to be upstanding, kindly. Government representatives. Thank you very much. We are very grateful. Next, we go to Interfaith. We also have teams. Thank you very much. Asantene. Next, we have members of civil society. Members of civil society present. Okay. Thank you very much. Members of ACT Alliance. Action by Churches Together. Thank you, beautiful. Thank you very much. Members from our Anglican Church of Kenya. Thank you, led by His Grace the Archbishop. Thank you very much. Those from the regions, ADS regions, community members present, and staff. Well done, well done, well done. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. Thank you for finding time to come and be part of this very, very important engagement. Now, you'll allow me, climate change is a national agenda, is a global agenda, and everybody is doing something to make sure that we address the effects of climate change. And we are happy that as an Anglican Church, through various avenues, through our development agencies, that is Anglican Development Services, we have climate change and resilience programs that we are undertaking in our respective regions. And then at the national level, we have Green Anglican Movement. It's a movement that the church feels needs to scale up the interventions on climate change. It's on this basis then, the Anglican Church is very keen working together with other stakeholders to participate in solutions to the effects of climate change. So early this year, together with the Action by Churches Together, we commissioned a study, and this study was to look at how the impact of climate change and what possible solutions can we come up with. And we are soon going to have a brief presentation on that so that we see what were the key findings when we went out there. So you'll allow me then to invite our presenter to come over and make the presentation. My name is Bwibo Adieri. I'm going to be your MC. I'm the Executive Director of Anglican Development Services. I work in the office of the Archbishop. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. His Grace, the Archbishop of Anglican Church of Kenya, all clergy is present, members of government officials who are present here, donors and partners and civil society. Good morning. Good morning once again. So my name is Edwin Ochieng. I work with an organization called Move on Africa, and we are into policy and research, and we had the opportunity to undertake the climate smart agriculture strategy assessment in 7 counties. We will just be presenting that so that we can be able to speak to the findings and discuss what are the solutions, as Bwibo did say, that can make us address climate-related vulnerabilities that affect our communities. In this particular research, we were able to collaborate, work closely with ADS Kenya, partners, and also the Ministry of Agriculture to coordinate and be able to undertake the research in 7 counties. So I will be making that presentation just to share with you some of the results that came from that particular study, so that then it can be able to inform what are the policy practices within our country. It can be able to guide development partners. It can be able to guide communities on how they can be able to adapt climate smart agriculture strategies that can be able to improve and transform food systems in our country, but also make sure that we can be able to address climate-related vulnerabilities that affect our country. So I'm just waiting for the ICT team. I'm not sure if they are ready. Meanwhile, as they work on that, you can also wish me happy birthday. Today is my birthday. It's a good occasion to have your birthday in a meeting where you're able to share some of the policy that define how our country should move forward. So I'm really blessed today. Yes, ICT team. Now, because I'm the owner of the research, I can still present as they put that together. So we had an opportunity to conduct the research looking at the climate smart agriculture strategy. This is a strategy that was put by government and which is supposed to end in 2026. Now, this strategy lays out the foundation, objectives, and principles on how the government, both at the national level and at the county level, are able to promote climate-smart agricultural practices that address issues of climate change, providing policy guidelines, providing opportunity on how financing is supposed to be done, but also how communities can adapt to strategies and practices that will be able to ensure that they can be able to address climate vulnerabilities. Now, the study was done in 7 counties. We had Kilifi, Kitui, Kajiado, Busia, Nyeri, and Kisumu. I think those are 7. And the first objective was to be able to look at, one, are communities aware of climate smart practices? And are they utilizing those practices? So we'll see what the results tell us. 2, what is the alignment in terms of policy between the climate smart agriculture strategy and other related policies? But a keen interest was on what counties are doing to make sure that they domesticate and are able to implement those policies. Then also looking at the financing component. How are resources coordinated, provided by donors, private sector, national government, and county government? But also the whole aspect of inclusion, when you look at women, when you look at youth, but also when you look at groups that are ideally excluded from development practices. So the report is here. And as I said, it was something that was done by a number of partners led by ACT Alliance and ADS Kenya, and of course, the Ministry of Agriculture was also able to support this. So in that particular report, for those of you who've had an opportunity to look at it, it provides context of the agricultural sector in Kenya. It also provides context of the climate smart agriculture strategy, looking at vision, goals, strategies, and objectives. But also, we were able to also share with you how the methodology, the scientific approaches that were used to be able to make sure that the findings are in place. If you look at the report, we have elaborated our finding on looking at the adoption practices, alignment and coordination, funding and resource allocation, but also documenting and communicating impact of the work. And we'll see what the research tells us. Certainly, in any assessment, there's need to look at challenges and gaps, but also lessons that can build into policy practice. There are emerging areas. As we know, all climate challenges keep on evolving, and even when we adopt practices, some of those practices become obsolete. Then, of course, we have recommendations which then can be utilized by different actors to ensure that they are able to change their practices. Now, when you look at the agricultural sector, one of the things that still stands out is its contribution to the GDP. 33% of our GDP is drawn from agriculture. That is directly, but also indirectly at 27%. And it employs almost 40% of our population. So you can see how this is very significant and very important. We already have units, crop production, livestock, fisheries, and agroforestry, and of course, other related sectors that also contribute to the agriculture. But there are certain such challenges that we all know. In our African country, we know very well that the issue of land tenure still is an issue. Soil degradation, low access to farm inputs, but also, we will not say underinvestment, but we will say that the investment still is a challenge in terms of infrastructure, but also looking at the disparities among population, especially when you look at gender. Certainly, issues of climate vulnerability also affect the agricultural sector. But quickly, we know that the environmental impact of this is that it contributes 41% of Kenya's total emission, which is very significant. And then, of course, this has necessitated policy responses, and we already have the Kenya Climate Smart Agriculture Strategy 2017-2026. It is ending in 2026. That means this assessment becomes an important anchor for the next strategy development and ensuring that we can be able to leverage best practices, but also address any challenges that emerge. But this strategy is significant because it looks at how do we increase productivity more sustainably, how do we enhance resilience to climate change, reduce green gas emission, and align national strategies to international commitments. A lot of the work that we do at the country level also aligns effectively with commitments we've made in different international spaces. Some of the implementation challenges already identified and which also informed the development of the strategy was the aspect of funding, technical capacity, coordination challenges, integration of CSA into county-level planning and monitoring system, and also adoption of the CSA practices by smallholder farmers. The purpose and the objective of the assessment was really to look at what is the progress that has been made this far by government, by the work done by faith institutions, donor institutions, CSOs, and even individual Kenyans who are in the agricultural sector. And this is to look at how do we respond to increasing the impact of climate change within the agricultural sector. So if you look at that report, and I'm sure you have a breached version, we were to generate evidence on the current state of implementation and adoption, highlight implementation gaps and opportunities for improvement, and also see how to inform national and county level policy. So out of this research, one of the things we've been able to do is develop a policy brief with clear policy response actions that can be used for advocacy, but also engaging different institutions to be able to leverage their effort, to be able to strategically engage stakeholders, civil society, faith-based actors, and all other. Specific focus for adoption was to look at awareness level, access to information, but also the application of CSS practices and the partnership. Coordination between national and county government, very important. Agriculture definitely is a devolved function, with policy coordination being still at the national level, but at the implementation being at the county level. So that coordination then is very significant and important. And we'll want to see what is it that county and national governments have done. Funding landscape. The idea of ensuring that there are resources to implement those CSA practices then become very important. We will see what is the contribution of the donor. We call them development partners, private sector, government's role, and the civil society. But ideally, we say, if you don't measure the impact of your work, you fail to communicate the successes you're having. So the monitoring and evaluation system and the ministry with development partners took time to develop a monitoring and evaluation framework. In it, we will then be looking at what needs to be improved in terms of implementation, and then, as I did mention, mobilizing, being able to develop the policy brief. Another important thing, and another dimension that informed this particular research, is the role of the faith actors. They are in communities, they are very close to citizens, especially where sometimes government services are not able to reach, and how they can be able to promote climate adaptation and sustainable agricultural practices. So this was done in 7 counties, not 8. That is Kajiado, I think 8, let me see, 1, 2, 3. There are 8. Kajiado, Turkana, Nyeri, Garissa, Busia, Kisumu, Kilifi, and Kitui. And somebody will ask, we have 47 counties. Now, the identification of these counties was also dependent on the agroecological zones, but also discussion with the Ministry of Agriculture to see where government has also been able and donor partners put significant resources to be able to ensure that the CSA practices are implemented. So within those, we were able to move to sub-counties and also be able to ensure that we can talk to different and diverse groups of communities. Now, a quick overview of the Climate Smart Agriculture Strategy. Some of you could be seeing this for the first time if you haven't read it, but the vision is very clear. Can we be able to achieve a climate resilient, low carbon, sustainable agriculture? Climate resilient, low carbon, sustainable agriculture, with the intention to improve and transform food security as a national development agenda, facilitating sustainable agriculture, but increasing productivity and enhancing resilience while minimizing. And one of the interesting things is that when you talk to the Ministry of Agriculture, they do calculation of the greenhouse gas emission very well to be able to know where the Kenyan government is. So building resilience and minimizing emission while specifically enhancing adaptive capacities and resilience of farmers, pastoralists, fisher folks, and minimizing GHG emission from agriculture. Significantly, again, coordination among institutions. It will be interesting to know whether this has been achieved. Thematic focus areas, as we've mentioned, just making sure that the mitigation of greenhouse gas emission to promote sustainable practices, but also enabling policy and legal landscape, and also addressing cross-cutting issues that look into finance, technology, gender inequality, and extension services. Now, from an institutional arrangement, you will find that this strategy has clear, definitive coordination roles by the national government, clear frameworks on how to mainstream CSA across different sectors, environment, energy, water, and land. And then you have county government with also clear roles, looking at the implementation of the intervention at the local level, but also integrating CSA into county integrated development plans. And it will be interesting to know, are counties doing this already? And also allocating resources and being able to coordinate stakeholders. Intergovernmental coordination mechanisms exist. We have different intergovernmental platforms. We have the Intergovernmental Relationship Summit, the Technical Committee. We have the Intergovernmental Forum on Agriculture, Joint Agriculture Secretary. All this, when you read the strategy, you'll find that one of the things that was thought out very well was how do we coordinate and provide a multi-stakeholder, multi-sectorial approach, making sure that everybody's effort is on the table. We have a role of state actors, faith-based organizations, and some of you present here could attest that some of the work that you are doing also builds onto this, including the role of the private sector, research, and the academia. Quickly, I will not belabor much on this because we've already spoken about all this. We were able to reach 240 farmers. May look a very small sample size, but very effective, but also based on the resources that were available. Had discussions with communities through FGDs. I must thank the ministry for being in the forefront to be able to organize, mobilize, and get us these respondents. I also want to thank the partners who are implementing this project led by Fred and other members of the team who were able to connect us with Anglican Development Services regional offices who then also provided farmers to participate in this in different levels. We did that analysis, which is, of course, standard, to analyze and present what we have. And, of course, as you do research also, the issues of ethics are very, very important, and making sure that the research is ethically sound. Certain limitations, of course, the time frame was very short. I'm sure Fred somewhere here will tell you, and the ministry people will tell you that all this work was done in 3 good weeks. 3 good weeks. And it had to be done because of the time frame, that we were provided with. But of course, we were still able to make sure that we were able to achieve that. So what are the findings tell us? So when you look at the demographic characteristics, one of the things that stands out that when it comes to the adoption practices of CSS, women are more involved. When you look at the adoption, women are more involved, youth are less represented, and also persons with disability, their presence is not very high. And that then begs the question, how do we make sure we bring them on board? The chart here shows the distribution across the counties on how we were able to reach those different areas, but you will see that there were more female than male respondents. In a random sampling, that then means that women are more involved in adoption of CSA practices, with different counties showing different numbers. When you look at the age, and this is very important to consider in terms of policy practice, that you see that the age between 18 and 24, only 4.8%. That the question is, how do we transition and make sure that young people are more involved? If you look at the other age group that is more involved, we have 36 to 60. That is 61% in terms of age and also youth. This one, we look at it from the youth perspective. How much are we making sure that young people are involved? Persons with disability, in a random sampling, we have 3%. Of course, we know that one of the development agenda that is being pushed is the inclusion of persons with disability and other vulnerable communities so that they are very, very, very involved. But even education will be an interesting component to look at when you find that most farmers are people who have completed primary school. Some of them, a majority also, have not gone through formal education, but there is low number when it comes to tertiary, with only, I think, 7%, only 7% within the tertiary institutions who are more involved in farming. So from a policy response perspective, it then means that as we promote CSA practices, there is need to bring everybody on board and make sure that those who are not involved are more engaged. So the first thing we looked at was, are they aware of CSA practices? And the finding is 80%, close to 79.4%, of farmers who responded in affirmative and indicated. And in some counties, it was even as high as 100%, meaning that already the practices are well embedded. And what practices did they mention? This is the work of the different actors, government, donors, and other actors. Water management, soil fertility management, agroforestry, drought-resistant crops, organic farming, climate-resilient fish farming, digital innovation, use of mobile apps and WhatsApp. And the drivers to this awareness is also very important. Why are they aware? Because they are actors in those communities who are taking time to be able to engage them. Calro was mentioned, FIAPS Africa, IFAD, KEFRI, county government, local NGOs who use training, sensitization, and workshops to make sure that these practices are adopted by the county, by the different farmers. A farmer gave in a quote and say, our understanding of climate smart include using drought-tolerant seeds, practicing conservation farming method like mulching and all that. And then, of course, there's also another quote there. This just shows what are the platforms that are being used. And this is significant because if we are going to use communication channels that are most effective in this evolving technological space, then we need to know which are the areas that are more significant. Radio and TV, and we've seen there are always programs. I think Citizen, there's Gold Farm, Climate. So there are those programs we see on TV. Local NGOs through capacity building efforts, farmer-to-farmer exchange programs, but of course also you can see social media is not left behind because we have platforms where farmers can be able to access information on CSA practices. Then of course types of information that are accessed, they are mentioned there. A lot of it is about weather forecast, there is market prices, farm inputs, trainings, But sometimes the challenges that were also mentioned was the issue around internet connectivity, especially in rural areas where communities are in remote areas. And then lack of also even mobile phone, because everything is moving digital. Even extension services these days are very digital. Not one extension officer can be able to cover very vast areas. So technology is becoming very significant. This is just showing the types of information, early advisory services, best practices, early warning, early planting, and all that, water conservation. In terms of crop farming, when you look at the application of CSA technology among farmers, 78% indicated that they're already practicing CSAs. That is also very significant. The 30% we can commit before the CSA ends, we can do the 30%. I'm sure we are all present here, and we may want to bridge this gap. Some of the practices, drought-tolerant crops, you can see the percentages, conservation agriculture, organic manure, water harvesting, and then, of course, some of the barriers are also mentioned. Still, water is an issue. Pests emerge. Lack of resilient seeds, and of course, environmental challenges that continue to be a challenge. Then, of course, in livestock farming, we've also seen 74. Most adopted, proper feeding, grazing, fodder, improved breeds, then water conservation, animal health practices. In terms of fish farming, very interesting. Water harvesting, use of raised dikes, ponds, the adoption of climate-tolerant fish species, and integrated aquaponic systems. Then, of course, there are quotes there that are very interesting from farmers that really indicate how they are adopting these practices. So you can see the adoption is almost 78% of that. Then alignment to strategies. So the other area was adoption, which I've talked about, and you can see awareness, information, and some of the practices. But I also want to speak about coordination, because if I take you back to the strategy, it speaks about one of the core objectives is how to align coordination among different actors. One of the things that is very impressive about Kenya is that we do very well in aligning our policy commitments to international agreements. And even when you attend some of those forums, people speak highly about our countries. This strategy aligns with the Paris Agreement. It also aligns to some of the revised commitments under NDC in 2022. Then at the country level, we also have certain policies that it directly associates with. Alignment with the UN agenda on promoting ending hunger, protecting the planet, and inclusive growth. And then, of course, looking at the SDG, zero hunger, climate action, life on land, and all that. And so when you read that strategy, you will see that a lot of those components are well covered. Then, of course, there's the CADAP, the previous one and the new one. There's the new CADAP. The 2010 framework has already been revised, and I think there's a new one. But when you read the CADAP, you'll find that one of the things that is important is how Africa can boost agricultural productivity, which is, of course, one of the principles. Then, of course, we also have alignment with the UN Agenda 2063. So we were able to read through these provisions and see how the CSA is aligned in terms of promoting inclusive growth, sustainable development. Our constitution, I always believe, is very resilient. Every policy that even comes after finds way of, you find articles within the constitution that still speak to the issue of underpinning environment protection, and which is one of the areas that also is in that. Then we have the National Climate Change Action Plan and the agricultural sector strategies. Now, alignment with CSA strategies at county, and this for me was the most interesting part of these discussions. That when you go to the counties, you realize that they have become very proactive in establishing policies, frameworks, plans that make sure that they can be able to promote CSA strategies. This is reflected in the CIDPs and then the county climate change action plans. For example, Busia has already the county climate change action to promote technologies, irrigation, drought-tolerant crops. You have Nyeri doing very well, County Climate Change Action Plan to integrate CSA interventions, investment in water storage, implementation of the climate smart agriculture project, but of course they also have a specific strategy, strategic plan just to monitor the CSA implementation. Kajiado, Climate County Action Plan. Of course, with the policy in place, it's easy to coordinate efforts. Then, of course, you have the Water Harvesting Act, and then the CIDP 2023-2027. Turkana is not left behind. They have the Turkana Climate Change Action Plan, looking at agriculture, rain harvesting, drought-tolerant crops, and of course, farming strategies. Then, of course, we have Kisumu. Watu wa Kisumu mkiwa hapa, this is what is going on there. There is already the Kisumu County Climate Change Action Plan. There is the Kisumu County Climate Change Policy. There is the Climate Change Act, and they are drafting sustainable energy policies. Kilifi also doing very well. You can see that. And then Kitui Climate Change Action Plan. So all these have already been put in place, and more is being done to be able to promote alignment and coordination at the county level. Then, of course, we have different platforms for coordination. There is the Climate Smart Agriculture Multi-Stakeholder Forum that coordinates stakeholders in agriculture and climate sector, chaired by the Climate Change Unit and the Ministry. They have quarterly meetings where they share experiences, coordination and planning. Joint Agricultural Sector Steering Committees, JASCOM, and also this is also at the county level. So at the county level, if you're not members of these particular committees, then maybe your effort and all that you are doing will need that you join this so that you can also share your experiences. These coordination platforms exist, are in place, very active, and supporting the CSA implementation. Then we have the involvement of state actors. The religious institutions are also involved, and also providing technical assistance, trainings to farmers, and also promoting collaboration. For example, we have ADS that hires agricultural experts for farmer training through the different ADS regions. And then we have some projects that are also implemented within those particular areas. But there is gaps in coordination. And this is important to note that there is low community participation and limited engagement, especially when you look at their contribution in budget policies and also policies at the county level. And this is important for us to see how do we make sure communities can be more engaged. Then, of course, engagement of faith institutions. We noted that the faith institutions are doing a lot of work, but this hasn't been documented. There are no studies to see, and if you look at it, you'll find that right from the Bible, there are already verses in the Bible that speak to how the faith institutions are promoting CSA spaces. Then, of course, financing and county prioritization of budgets. And you cannot blame counties because there are a lot of competing development priorities within those sectors. Then a lot of programmatic work that is done to promote CSA is based on donor funding. One of the danger with that is we all know donor funding are time-based, 3 years, 5 years, and so continuity and sustainability sometimes becomes a limitation. They can start an initiative and then based on conditions also begin. Then of course the lack of centralized monitoring and evaluation framework. It is interesting to note that the CSA strategy has a monitoring and evaluation framework with clear indicators on what needs to be tracked. But for some strange reasons, people choose or institutions choose to develop their own indicators, and then now the lack of bringing all this impact together. Then of course, disbursements to funds to counties because of certain delays or legislative delays also sometimes impact on that. So when you look at funding and resource, that was just coordination, alignment to policy, and you can get a feel on the performance of counties, the performance of the national government, but also areas that there are weaknesses. Allow me to speak about fundraising and resource mobilization. The government of Kenya has done well. There is funding to the Ministry of Agriculture in different forms, and you can see some of the projections from 2023, 66, 87, 84. So a lot of this, there is that, but of course we have commitments like the Maputo Protocol, which also gives us a target. Now, when you come to that, you'll find that the money allocated to climate, to CSA, either through forest conservation, livestock, fisheries, and the figures are there. And we will have a table on what the government is doing. We look at what are the challenges. Counties are not left behind, and I'm telling you, they have taken up this initiative significantly. For example, there is increased allocation from the county of Busia, and you can see those figures, how they've been performing. The areas of water and climate investment, key challenges is that when you read these county budgets, there is no specific budget lines that show this is what should be able to go to different, and that then means it is lumped together with other development efforts within those strategic framework. Nyeri County allocations are there, and these are drawn from the county budgets in terms of how they are investing and making sure that they can mainstream CSA practices in terms of spending. Kajiado County commitments in terms of budgets and initiatives, and also some of the projects that they are doing. Garissa County also has developed CIDPs and also external funding through donor-supported. Part of the issues that were also raised is the issue of the underutilization of the budget, that by the time the financial year ends, you find some budgets have not been utilized. So how can we support counties to be able to do budget absorptions in terms of that? Then, of course, Turkana, there is significant investment. You can see the resources. Now, when we see all these resources, part of the things that as civil society, faith-based institutions, is how do we ensure that communities participate in decision-making so that these resources can be used for purposes. Kisumu also doing well in terms of resource allocations and budget allocation. Kilifi is not left behind. They're also doing some budget allocations in different aspects. Kitui, in fact, for Kitui, it is, I think, a best practice in the sense that they have, through a legislation, put in that 1.5% of their development budget will go to issues of climate financing, which is really very significant. And that means that that resources have been ring-fenced, and it is easy to tell how much will always go into climate-related actions. We will not forget about the donor support. Donors and private sectors have made significant contribution. Theirs come in form of technical capacity, knowledge transfer, scaling up innovations, and especially addressing climate vulnerabilities. Development partners have supported national and county efforts in bilateral, multilateral funding, and we have some projects here that are known to us. For example, the World Bank KCSP, which is in counties like Garissa. We have the FLOCA programs about climate governance. There are resources there. The SDSP, funded by CEDA. Then other donors, we have IFAD, FAO, USAID, former USAID, I mean, and then who work on nutrition-sensitive agriculture, climate smart irrigations, and all that. Then, of course, we have also private sector input. When you look at the private sector contribution, they are more into input provision and technology. We have companies like SEEDCO, Kenya Seed Company, digital and mobile services, platforms like DigiFarms, Ice Shamba, Agri Wallet, where farmers can be able to get extension services. Then financial services and insurance, M-Pesa, we have APA insurance and all that offer digital loans. Then the uptake of insurance, of course, is low. Then we have, they also do work on value chain development, agri-business promotion, also some work on energy, renewable energy solutions, that is also very significant. But what are the challenges around funding? It's important to also take note that all is not good, and there are still opportunities for policy improvement. One, inadequate public financing. Of course, we know that CSA funding is fragmented and is in different county, national departments, and this makes it very difficult to collectively track what is the overall input in terms of funding and contribution. Of course, we can't deny things we know. Example, sometimes counties struggle with limited short-term planning because they do only 5 years plan, limited physical space, a lot of developmental competitions in terms of funding, and then, of course, over dependence on donor. Of course, donors support a lot of the work that we do, but if we integrate this, it will also be very important because some of the significant projects that have also contributed to this, especially at community level, you will find that they are donor funded. Then, of course, limited private sector engagement. How do we bring private sector? And to bring private sector, we must assure of them how will we be able to de-risk or support them in terms of policies that can ensure that they can provide their financial resources. Low community level access to finance. How do we work on this? Collaterals, literacies, address accessibility barriers, but also ensure that digital finance platforms have improved inclusion that ensures products are accessible to vulnerable groups. Let me speak about monitoring. So I've spoken about adoption of CSA practices. I've talked about policy alignment and coordination, funding and resource, but I want to speak about efforts around monitoring and evaluation. Here, there was an effort to ensure that we can have an integrated platform by the Ministry of Agriculture so that everybody's contribution can be reflected and show the impact. This hasn't been fruitful, but of course there's the monitoring and evaluation framework that was developed with clear indicators and how the data should be collected. But we noted that there are already different data sources to track the progress at county level. For example, the Council of Governors had the Marifa Center platform. We have Kitui County that have also, then there's the Kajiado that have also developed their own platform. We have Kilifi that have also developed their own platform. And so there are all those platforms that are being used, but the issue that is lacking is that one common platform. Then of course, in terms of monitoring, we noted that county annual progress reports really capture very well what counties are doing. And if you read those reports, you will find some of the efforts elaborated there. Their websites also speak well to their interventions. Then of course, in terms of what they are doing at the county level. Challenges is lack of community engagement mechanisms, the issue of limited access to appropriate technology, then of course also the integration of CSS in county plans, and then provision of some of those startups, late disbursement and all that. There are emerging issues as we consider the review of the current CSA. There are emerging issues. One is the issue of carbon credit to support smart agriculture. And the beautiful thing about it that the head of state, Dr. William Ruto himself, already has put this conversation in the forefront and how we can leverage on carbon credit to ensure that we can be able to provide those initiatives. Then adoption of adoption practices to reduce emissions and also ensure there is sustainable land use. Then we have other areas that need to be looked into. Gender and climate smart agricultural practices. How do we include everyone? Young people, persons with disability. You saw what the demographic statistics showed us, and how can we be able to leverage efforts to ensure that there is that planning. Then of course, making sure that what is done is more gender responsive. Other challenges and gaps relate to issues of, for example, the issues of use of minimum tillage, and then of course, use of renewable energy. And a good example was given that as much as we are promoting renewable energy, when power goes off, farmers will go back to use generators that make it difficult to, and which mitigates that level of effort. As we wind up and conclude, it is our conclusion that it is indeed that farmers across the counties that we sampled are aware of CSA practices, and they have mentioned them. It is also important that we've identified that channels such as TV provide farmers with a lot of information, but also there is also adoption practices shown by different rates in terms of livestock, crop production, and the other aspects. There is also coordination support that is going on through the different roles by state actors. And then for the M&D framework, we may need to do something about it because we are not measuring the impact in terms of what the issue of funding and how that can be coordinated. What are the recommendations as we wind up this? One, opportunities to strengthen collaboration, clarifying roles, improving coordination between national and county governments based on the structures that are available. We looked at the M&D tool, and we look at the CSS strategy. We realize that the CSS strategy has clear indicators, and the M&D framework has different indicators. So that creates a bit of confusion on which one should then be adopted. If we standardize that and everyone knows what they're contributing to, it will be good, very important. CIDPs provide very good opportunities to embed the CSF plans in development framework, but then of course, we should also be working.
Thank you very much, Edwin, for that very elaborate presentation. We'll be having, at some point, in our chief guest, the Archbishop of the Anglican Church of Kenya. Should I stand here?
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Buibo, for this opportunity. And we are much honored to be here today. I'm standing in, as you can see in the program, we have Julius Mbatia, who is our Global Programs Manager, ACT Alliance. So I'm just standing in for him, and I will be reading the keynote remarks. But before going now to go to the speech, which I'm reading on behalf of Julius Mbatia, who is our Global Government of Kenya, Ministry of Agriculture, Government of Kenya, Ministry of Agriculture, Development Partners, Civil Society, faith leaders and actors, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of the ACT Alliance, I'm honored to join you in launching the Kenya Climate Smart Agriculture Strategy 2017-2026 Implementation Assessment Report. This moment is more than a launch. It is a collective reflection on how far we've come and what more must